process. And the circle out by Borgland is a classic example of that. There were many hearings on that. When you were looking at developments that were going in out there like Harbor Hill and a couple of others off to the left, going down the back roads the other way. And there were people coming out of that process extremely unhappy. But at the same time, as a community, we have to account for continued growth and development, which is going to bring about these kinds of compromises. And you know, Commissioner Snodgrass comment that is where it's absolutely crucial that we have public input. And unfortunately, we don't have a whole lot of public input unless it's negative, because something is going to happen in somebody's neighborhood that they don't like. It's a very difficult challenge, as I'm sure Robin knows. She works it every day.
It is both the challenge and the interesting part of it as well, is to try to find the sweet spot. And cynical view is, if you tick off, half the people on each side of the argument, then you've found the right path there. We are just about done, and I thank you for all your comments. This has really been interesting. I'm going to leave you with this. Do you mind handing these out? I'm sorry. So this is, I don't know how many I printed out, a zillion. All right, let's take them. Thank you. So this is our the other checklist. This is the PSRC checklist. And I have a link up there for our commissioners that are not present. If you can't click on that or don't see that, I will pass that along as well after this meeting. But it's just interesting. A lot of it is an overlap. The PSRC checklist includes things that they are not technically involved with when they review our comp plan. Initially, PSRC was only reviewing, in terms of certification, they were only reviewing our transportation element. That expanded recently to look at our housing element. Undoubtedly, there's a connection. We know that. But their checklist has expanded to pretty much all the elements that we have. And again, you could argue, of course, that they're linked. That doesn't mean that they would deny certification necessarily. There's still some conversation about what that means if we, on the economy or whatever, if they don't think we hit the mark. I don't think that they can deny us certification, but it's interesting. And again, it goes back to sort of, who we need to please. Well, in this case, we need to please both Commerce and PSRC to a certain extent. But certification is pretty critical. So if they're expanding their purview, we need to be mindful of that. So at your leisure, please feel free to flip through the other checklist that we have to deal with. And our consultant is working on completing that as well. We don't have to turn it in or anything. It really is just our own tool to make sure we're on track and we're hitting the mark in terms of, dealing with the issues that the region wants us to deal with, which makes sense.
Robin, I have a question maybe that's a little bit off topic here, but I just happened to turn to this page here and it says regional collaboration. I said, well, that's kind of what my question's about. Parks and recreation. I thought I saw something in the checklist that said that was optional.
Yes.
I think it's really important that we address that issue because in this collaboration matter, we have significant part of the city of Gig Harbor, which is most of North Gig Harbor, that is both in the city and in the Penn Met Parks District. And I wonder what kind of services we're getting from PennMet. Because they don't have any, well, they do have a park, I guess it's the Forest Park. Is actually within the city limits, but they don't really have anything that you would consider to be a typical kind of a park in the city limits of Gig Harbor. And I think, as I pointed out to you after the meeting last time, we've got schools with playgrounds, athletic fields, and they're all locked up during the summer. Yet we need that kind of collaboration. We need these agencies to be working together so we can expand parks and recreational and athletic opportunities for our citizens and our kids.
Agreed. I agree. And the pros plan, and it's not, unfortunately, it's not well laid out in the parks element, but in the plan that was adopted last year, it does talk about those partnerships. I mean, particularly with PennMet, not so much with, Pierce County as an entity. But and they were a part of that outreach and that conversation that produced the pros plan in 2018. I was around, so I don't know what that looked like. But 2022. But it started before that. So that type of collaboration is happening. In terms of the county, I don't know. I'm not sure, but it's a good question. The checklist, as you point out, has a number of different requirements, statements, policy pieces where they are, we're supposed to say that we're collaborating, and these are the areas where, land use, transportation, all of these things, it goes back to the conversation we've had before. It's one thing to say, collaborate with county on transportation issues. What does that mean, right? I mean, we, flesh that out a little bit instead of just say, meet or collaborate, create an agreement that says ... I mean, again, it's maybe putting a little meat on the bone of some of these things, but it's why theoretically, it's why we have these different layers, is because as was said, we don't have a moat around the city of Gig Harbor, and everything affects, and that's why we take a regional approach as well as a countywide approach. But it's how we go about that. So it'll be interesting to see as we start to fill out this checklist and see how we are meeting those goals or not. We'll be spending a lot more time on specifics as we get into actual text and text amendments, which we're still a ways off, but we will talk about how we are falling short in the language that we are using now, and what we need to do specifically, create interlocal agreements with, these agencies or these other jurisdictions to establish, fill in the blank. Again, what do we want to say? Do we want to establish, some sort of interagency group, commission, advisory, something or other. There are ways to do all of this. I don't know as much about how it works up here, but it's pretty common in other places that I've worked, where you have regular meetings, and I'm sure we've done this in the past. And like I said before, Carl DeSimas and several other folks here at the city have been meeting with folks in Pierce County on discrete issues, but I don't know what the framework is for that, how established that is, and I don't think that that's in our comp plan, and I think it should be. That is all I have.
Robin, these don't require an answer. I'm just gonna throw a couple of things out here. Is there a planner assigned to each of the elements on your team? Your vast team of junior planners?
Not to each element. And of course, some are in the purview of public works. So transportation, the capital facilities, the utilities, no. And Roxy has been dealing with the climate action and urban forestry and some other, she's working on the sports complex. So her plate has been pretty full. She will be taking on more than she has in the past. And, you know, I mean, it is also, well, let me back up. Both Roxanne and Jeremy Hammer, who presented the economic development element, both of them are on the biweekly calls that we have with our consultant. So as we're talking about strategies, approaches, public outreach, both of my planners, senior planners, are involved in those conversations. My other planner, Diane McBain, is handling the bulk of like sort of the day-to-day stuff, and she's full up. So so it really is, it's me, it's Roxy, it's Jeremy, and Carl dips his toe in from time to time to sort of help steer the ship if needed. So that's, yeah.
Another point, you have a GIS person on staff, right? I
We do.
presume that person is busy doing all kinds of graphs and charts right now for the comp plan, updating layers and all that stuff. Because I would think this is a great time to get that work done ahead of the writing, if you will, to have the data sheets ready.
We have, I mean, so he worked with Roxy to do the story map. And that, if you haven't looked at that on our website, I encourage you to. And that uses the layers that we have. Now, when it comes to making changes or updating, you know, inventory lists or things like that, he'll be involved. There's not, and maybe it's a good question. I mean, we check in with him on comp plan, like where we're at. He will obviously be involved as we like literally, like I said, change mapping or change, you know, trying to think of what else in terms of mapping will change. He's not been involved in doing projections. That's really more our consultant, like the
I was thinking
Yeah, go ahead.
the things that are what they are, like critical areas. And
Yeah.
all the things that you're gonna find in the comp plan.
fully mapped.
Okay. You could get that going.
We have
They
that.
haven't already.
Oh my gosh, we have. Unfortunately, a lot of the layers that are available to planning staff have not been made public. We do have a public, and don't ask me why, I really don't know. But I mean, some layers make sense, you know, there's some sort of security concerns with certain things that you don't want everybody necessarily to have access to. But I mean, even, you know, anything that's specific to, you know, archaeology or critters that are endangered or something like that, you're not going to necessarily spell that out for a variety of reasons. We do have a public version of our GIS, and unfortunately, I don't spend enough time looking at that to see what a subset, please.
It's terrible.
Oh,
It's
that's-
terrible.
That's
In
really-
fact, I have spoken to your GIS person. He was surprised at how little I had access to in my professional capacity. It's not good.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I advocated for that early on, only because I was used to that, and broken record, you know, previous jurisdictions. We only took out a few layers from the public version, like, you know, names and addresses of, you know, property owners and things like that. It has, yeah, I almost wish, I mean, I almost feel like putting it up and showing you, but I want to keep everybody, and we'll talk about this more. Our GIS has a ton of information, far more than any other mapping system that I've seen. I mean, you name it, critical areas for sure, but every layer, federal, state, local classifications of wetlands and riparian areas, and all of our infrastructure. If you want to find out where a wellhead is, or you want to find out where, you know, water tanks are and stuff, there's just a ton. It's almost overwhelming how much is there. And I'm sorry to hear that the subset of that is available to the public is so anemic. I'll talk to Mike and see who made that decision, if we can maybe open that up a little bit more, because it's a great tool. And if it were easier to use and had more information, it would actually save us a lot of time answering questions when people call and say, I mean, half the people that call our desk don't know whether they're in the city or the county, frankly, and have no idea, where easements are, or, where the water line is, and all of that stuff is available. So I'm gonna have that conversation, and I'll see what I can
Like I
do.
said, I mean, I think when I was doing the work, he was relatively new and he was surprised at how little I had access to.
Okay, I'm gonna follow up on that, because it's amazing what we
Yeah,
have.
that's troubling, what you say, Commissioner Snodgrass, because when we were dealing with the short-term rentals,
Ah,
and Carl was doing some modeling for us using GIS, and I think, maybe those of you who were on the commission at that time, remember, what he could do was fantastic. We could say, well, you had to have 250 feet between all short-term rentals, what would it look like? And he was able to pop it right up on the
boom, boom, boom,
screen.
boom, boom. Yeah. Yeah, and our GIS specialist, Mike Simmons, is he's wonderful and brilliant. And every time we ask, can you do this? Like, he finishes, practically before you hang up the phone. So he has the skills. I will find out what the barrier is and why, and if there is a way for commissioners to maybe have access, even if it's not available to everybody out there. I don't want to promise anything. I probably shouldn't have even
I
gone
do
that far. But
understand not having every layer
Yeah,
available to
yeah.
people, but a discussion of which layers are useful
Yep.
and which, because I mean, or how that would work, because I, as a commercial appraiser,
Right.
I need more information than maybe a general resident. I don't,
Right,
but that's the access that I have.
yeah,
So having a discussion of what makes sense to have available would be
right. I will have that discussion, I promise. I'll get back to you. Because it is a great tool, and it does play into all of this, and yeah, okay. Duly noted.
No mas. I'm done. We worked her over enough, John.
All right, anything else then? 7:20, and I sense the conversation's winding down a little bit. Anything else anybody wants to ask or bring up at this time? Okay. Let's see, next meeting. We've got. Look on my agenda here. Our next meeting is on August 3rd. And do we have anything specific for that one yet?
I don't. I was gonna talk to Roxy and see, I wasn't sure if she was gonna be ready with the climate action plan or not.
Okay.
If not, I suspect that we will launch back into an element discussion. We're getting close to maybe even transportation, even though that's a big one. Because I will be meeting with folks. I know. It'll just be the part that's readable, not the whole thing. I won't expect anybody to read any of the rest of it, but we'll do excerpts. I will confirm that after I talk to our consultants tomorrow. I just want to have, I want to be more conversant in some of the things we talked about earlier, the level of service, and just have a firmer grasp on the vernacular. And but that's my tentative plan, is to get into transportation.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, thank you. So I guess the chair will entertain a motion then to adjourn if there's nothing else.
So moved.
Adjourn. Okay, second? Second. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and we are adjourned at 7:23. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for your patience with our tech issues.
Sorry about the tech glitch.